Hello, can everybody hear me? Cool. So, thank you everyone for coming. I realise that this kind of 2 p.m. slot, having been to quite a number of conferences, it's after lunch. It's the second one after lunch. It's kind of the slump. It's when the coffee's kind of run out. So, so I appreciate everyone for actually coming to listen to me talk. And yeah, if the person next to you just starts snoring, we just give them a little nudge just to wake them up. So, so what I'm going to talk around over the next half an hour is a little bit of my experiences running a platform engineering team. I'm going to go through a little bit that I did here in the UK, and then a little bit how taking that more globally. I'm going to go through a few of the tips that I kind of come. It's going to be those tips are going to be framed more happy path. Obviously, things are a lot more challenging, particularly when you're working at an enterprise type scale. But I am going to position it in terms of these are some practical tips that will help you along. But obviously, when we come to Q&A or come and grab me afterwards, you can really dig in and just ask me about some of the other challenges that we went through at the time. I'll give you a little bit of history about myself, and then we'll come in. So what I actually mean by a platform, because obviously we have a few people will come with different definitions as we go through. So just a little bit about myself before I start. So I have been fortunate enough that I've been in tech now for over 25 years. I've been fortunate enough to work in a number of countries. So I've worked here in the UK, I've worked in Ireland, and I've worked out in the US. There's another flag on there because that's where I was born. I've also been in, ad hoc, I've worked in other countries. So I've worked in Spain, I've worked in India, so I've been out and worked in Canada. I've been out in a number of countries, but those are actually where I've lived and where I've worked. So I've been fortunate from that. My background is really in this kind of, this event, so across both days, so really into SRE, DevOps, platform engineering, as we're going to talk around now. Really about path to production, how we can engineer and build a sustainable, safe pace for going through. Quality and security is going through. I'm doing a master's in AI, and I just love talking to people about coffee, having a coffee and just talking to people about tech. So again, afterwards, come and talk to me, and we can keep that going. So very quickly, what do I mean by a platform? Because I realize that we could be talking about business platforms, we could be talking about technical platforms, we could be talking about third-party vendors that we may be using. So we may be using PayPal or Stripe, and we may call those a platform. So what do I mean by a platform? So we've got the first definition on there. What I really kind of see from this is if you take the first quote is the what, and where I really come from is why. Why do these platforms exist? What are we trying to actually deliver from it? And I see it that as we've gone through, particularly over the last decade or so, we're expecting more and more and more from our development teams. So we're expecting them now to be really au fait with how the CI/CD pipelines work. So they're no longer just Java developers. Now they have to work out how do we get the automation? How do we get all those security controls into our pipelines? They may be now we have to run the underlying solutions that we're using to build our solutions, or we're having to integrate into a number of different third-party tools. We're then expecting our teams to go and patch applications. Patch the servers. We're giving so much onto them that they may not historically have been able to do. We start looking at, the teams are now going, we'll containerize the application. We'll take a little bit more in, and we've got a little bit more control. But then we're now expecting, what's the runtime that you're going to run that container on? So now we're expecting the teams to also be Kubernetes administration experts as well, and we're expecting all of this from the team. So as we go through. So. All in the backdrop, as I mentioned right at the start, that I'm kind of passionate about quality and passionate about security. So we're in this backdrop that we're probably now in this age where security, regulations, etc. We're all having to deal with those sorts of topics. So whilst you're thinking that the teams are now taking on all this extra responsibility, how are we making sure that they are still adhering to all our regulations, all our controls, all the things that we've got within organizations? So So the first one's the what, the second one's the why. Why do we have these platforms? And in my opinion, it's there. It's making it so that it is the path of least resistance for the teams to just do the right thing. So you're actually helping them out so they can focus on writing the Java code without having to then become experts in everything else that is going on. So that's what I mean by a platform. I'll just go into a little bit more detail. You'll have probably seen the next ones as I go through. They're probably a checklist that you may have seen before, but I will come to them throughout this talk. So what do I mean by a platform? I don't mean that I'm going to create a platform team and you come and ask me to do stuff. I don't want tickets. I don't want those sorts of things. What I'm talking about here is we're setting something up so you can go away and it's self-service. So you can stand up, whether it's cloud infrastructure, whether it's deploying an app, building an app, integrating into security tools, whatever it happens to be, I want you to be able to do it through self-service. I don't want you to be coming to my team. As you scale out, and in my case, as we come to, if you were there sitting behind a ticket system, you would just be absolutely swamped. So number one is around that. Supported, so I'm make sure that if you are actually running a platform, then it is supported under the cover. Again, I'm going to come in more detail to all of these. It has to be compelling, and I'll come to the next point. It has to be voluntary. In my opinion, it has to be voluntary. So you're making it compelling, you're making it supported, and it's self-service. Therefore, it's getting the features that the teams actually want to go and use, and so you make it voluntary. You don't mandate it, but because of everything else you're doing, you're actually getting adoption. Fingers crossed. And then you want it to evolve to the needs of everyone. So as things come in. Are the teams using new languages, are the new frameworks, etc.? Just making sure that you are evolving, you're going out and listening to them, and overall that means we're managing it as a product. So you probably have seen those before. If you've picked up from the original definition that I came to from a platform, you've probably seen a checklist very similar to that. So let's just wind back slightly. This is a personal journey of mine. We're going back to maybe 2012 to 2014. There's a few people in this audience that I worked with at that time, and they'll tell me afterwards whether I've got my history right. But we were running a variety of things at that time that we didn't know we called platforms, but they were platforms. We had about 300 to 500 engineers. We kind of ebbed and flowed in terms of what we were providing. But that was where we kind of started off this particular journey. And then my role then to go and take what we were doing and work across the entire enterprise. So our organization at the time was an enterprise, 5,000 engineers. How can we take those patterns, those practices, some of those things that I mentioned, and take that across the enterprise and go and run it now from something that we were doing for the UK, 300, 500 engineers. How do you then go and do that 5,000 engineers across? So we're talking here all the way across from from New Zealand all the way to the west coast of the US, 24/7. How do you run these platforms for them? So that was a little bit of the potted history. Again, I haven't told you yet what the platform is. I'm going to come to that in a second. It's not sexy, it's not interesting, but I'll come to that in a second. So the things that I learned as we're going through both on a local level, so when we're just talking about the UK, the problems that we faced within the UK, those 300, 500 engineers, and also the same problems that we saw when we're talking about the enterprise scale, is that you have this tension that's always going on. You have the teams who want a bit of consistency. They want those standards in place, and you have the other teams who are just wanting the autonomy to go and do it themselves. And it is an ebb and flow as you try and find that sweet spot as you are working your way through. I'm going to leave decentralized over here. I'm kind of favoring and where I've always ended up, despite the fact that I have kind of worked my way through that ebb and flow. As you go through, you just give a little bit and you take a little bit back, and you're just trying to find out what's the best thing for the organization. So you've got a fully centralized. I'm not a fan of fully centralized personally, but that's where you've got all the controls, you've got all the regulations. You've also got somebody who's saying, and this is the only way we're going to do it. And you're going to use this particular tool, and you're going to use this platform, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Somewhere in the middle is a little bit more a federated model, where you still have all the controls, you have the regulations, you have the standards, but you're giving a little bit more freedom as to the local teams kind of working a bit of those things out themselves. How are they actually going to do it? So you've still got them, but are you providing guardrails? Are you actually providing what are you providing, tooling, et cetera? Are you giving them a little bit more freedom? I kind of find that I ebb and flow between federated and centralized. It's just how the organization works. Every organization is different. And what worked for me, what worked for us in these kind of cases may not work elsewhere, but this is just a case study of my own experiences. So that is just find the sweet spot. You're not going to get it perfect. Just work out where it applies best for your organization. The other thing that we did, that was our why. It's terrible, but it was ours. But it's why do you actually exist? What would be your elevator pitch as you are there when you're trying to sell what it is that you are actually providing the organization, particularly as you start scaling out then and you're going up to the equivalent of C-suite within your organization. You may have huge organizations, and we had organizations that we were trying to sell our platform to that were generating revenue in excess of $1 billion. So we were in that kind of scale where you have to really try and sell it. That isn't a very good one, but that's what we're doing. So one of the things that I'm just saying in here is define why you exist. It's not just that there is a platform to you, but what are you actually trying to achieve by being in there. So in our case, we were there. We were trying to set up the development teams to go and build better, faster, safer code. Not very good, but that was our definition at the time. So let me just briefly kind of I'll come to what was our actual platform. Again, like I say, it's nothing. There's not a lot of interesting stuff to this, but I will talk through what I'm actually going through. So we had a number of managed platforms and I come to them. We supported everything that we had. People could instantiate them through self-service. We did all the security, we did all the patching, we did all the networking, we did all the disaster recovery, we did all the scalability. We put everything in so the teams didn't have to worry about them. It was just there for them. And I'm going to throw a few things, and you're going to go, well, how did you do that for these? So let me just talk around. So we had GitHub. We had approximately 50,000 repositories. We managed the enterprise project. We put all the controls in around the GitHub usage. There's a few nuances if you're GitHub Enterprise that you want to give some administration access. I actually wanted to give away access. You can't really do stuff, so we kind of created some self-service type stuff that allowed people to kind of do some administration without giving them the access that they need. It's just some little nuances within there. But yeah, we were supporting 50,000. We're doing 50,000 repositories. Like I say, 5,000 engineers doing all the license management, etc. We also had what is now Artifact Registry, but we had GCR, and again, we were sorting out all the IAM. We're doing all the permissions. We're just making it really easy for people to create their container registries. We also ran Nexus repositories. We had it was about 10,000 Nexus repositories. Again, entirely self-service. All the integration was done. Teams just said, I need one. What type is it? It's just all automated there. We hooked everything into the SSO. So everything we talk around here, we did all the glue, everything that everybody needed. So you just clicked a button, you got your instance, and you had single sign-on. You had all the controls that you needed to go and operate were all baked in. Now, one of the things there is no one could actually reach the internet. Nobody could actually go out. So our platform, we'd got Nexus Firewall in, we'd done all the routing in. So if you used our platform, you managed to pull stuff from Maven Central. If you didn't, you'd have a little fight with security and networks. But if you used our platform, it was one of the compelling things. We'd sorted all of that magic out. But we made sure that anything you were pulling in had gone through there. Don't boo at Jenkins, but we had Jenkins and SonarQube, and again, people could go and instantiate their own instance just off the bat. All ran on Kubernetes under the cover, so technically you got the namespace, and we did all the master slave. It was all ephemeral. We did all of that, but again, it was kind of self-service and built in. So then there was some things that we didn't actually run, but we did all the networking, all the security, all the integrations. We gave some little kind of plugins and that kind of thing. So integrating into ServiceNow, we created some kind of little change management libraries that people could use if they want, so they could, if they were running Jenkins, they could go and automatically create changes and that kind of thing. So we created a few things. Fortify for some security scanning. So again, we didn't run these platforms, but we integrated with them. We did the same with Jira. and we did the same for Styra, so we had policy as code in there as well. So we'd hooked all of these things in, so if people were coming in, all the things that they would have had to have done themselves if they didn't, because we had these, like I say, we had central kind of regulations and these were working, so we built all of this out for them. So that allowed teams now, they could just come in, they could build that, and they could go write their own CI/CD pipelines. They could use that to deploy infrastructure as well, so they could do the IAC in there. The next layer that we did though, so teams could go and do that. That's where they could stop. But we then created that golden path as well. So that was the next level in the middle that we went to provide. So you could come in, you could just use the platforms, but also we will provide out, and it was inner sourced. So we actually did it in a way that we would take contributions in. So if you were working and you had a, maybe you spotted a bug in it or you had something, we allowed it, it was inner source kind of thing. But we built out a golden path as well. And that was for infrastructure as code, deployment out, and also applications supporting a number of languages. So again, that built in all the security, all the tooling, everything that you would have had to have gone through if you wanted to build it yourself. I mentioned a little bit around the infrastructure side. So as part of this, as part of the self-service, we also gave people I want to create a new GCP project. That was all automated. We did have a little bit in AWS. If you want to create an AWS account, that was also automated for people, and it hooked in all the stuff that you needed out of the box with it. And also you could come along and incrementally, so if you needed a new CIDR address networking, that again was self-service and it got added into your project. So we like I say, we tried to get out of the way. We didn't have a huge team. We were supporting a lot, but we tried to do it. So coming then to that tip, so I've kind of hinted as I've been going along, we were all about self-service. We wanted to get ourselves out. We would not have scaled to the organization had we been accepting tickets in from everyone. So we were out there just building automation, building it for the teams to come in. A lot of it, we didn't need approvals. We just needed to provide the means to go and do something. The audit trail was there in the tooling that we built out. So if they wanted a new account in AWS, we provided the automation for it, etc. So if you wanted we didn't ask you why did you need a new Jenkins. You just, you filled in the thing, you pressed button, there you got one, and it hooked in all the, like I say, all the security, all the SSO, all the groups, all got built out of the box. So like I say, we were obsessed with not having. So again, no one should be asking us to. We also, however, we didn't want people to ask us how to use the platform. So we wanted to make it so really obvious. So it was just you came in from that side. But we augmented it, so we did documentation, we did videos, we did those sorts of things just to make it that if it wasn't really clear what it was, then we augmented it with a few things. And like I said, there was a few bits along the way. We provided self-administration. So once you'd created something within the guardrails that were there, we provided you, and again, it was hooked into the groups, the AD group, so that you had an admin group, and then you controlled who was admin, and then the admin gave you certain rights that you would have within the tool. So again, we wanted to run the underlying platform, but just hand it over to you so you could go and run it yourself. And this is the same, which taking the teams don't need to be worrying about, is it patched? Is the DR in there? Is it scalable, etc.? Because we were taking care of it all underneath the covers. Again, so I've mentioned the support the platform. So we made commitments. So we made SLO. We had SLOs in place for it. We had a whole variety of very public dashboards as to the availability of every single instance that people were using, so they could go and look. We had aggregated reports by business units, so people could go and see if we were selling this to a particular business unit. Well, how are all their teams, all the instances for their teams being run? Again, I was kind of an advocate with the team to go and get them out talking and not sit behind. So if something was wrong, or not sit behind a team having to raise a ticket. So I tried to get people to go and engage in chat rooms, talk through. And we were doing 24/7 support. The other thing then we come to, well, how did we know that what we were doing was actually successful within the organization. So we set ourselves goals, like we do. So we were kind of following, we'd assumed a 70-20-10 kind of rule. So we thought 70% they'll just use this as is, no questions asked. So our challenge was to go and find who they were within the organization, because we expected that they would just come and use it. We kind of guessed there'll be about 20% who needs a bit of tweak. Maybe there's a language, maybe there's something not quite there that they would want. That became more of a partnership, so that's where we had an inner source model, but that actually became more of a, well, you've already done this is your come and help us. And we did a few little hackathon kind of things where we took some of their developers that came in, they updated the libraries, off they went, they then were able to roll it out into there. So that was kind of the partnership. And then we kind of said there's 10% who, skeptics, not built here, or maybe they're just too niche, it's not an enterprise product scale, maybe they're just doing something in a very particular framework, and again, don't boo, but if I said Rust, maybe there's some people who are doing that, it's not quite there for the rest of the organization at that time, so maybe we weren't going to support it at that time, but so that fell into that, and we were aiming to get about 80% adoption. So then I think finally as I come through, we're talking around managing the platform as a product. So how did we actually do that? So we had a dedicated product manager. And like I say, we had 5,000 engineers, but a huge business unit. So we actually had someone there. We went through, we had kind of forums that we were going through. So come and speak to us. We gave those kind of opportunities. We had other sessions as well. We took in typical user surveys. So how are people finding the use of these platforms that we're providing? So we're trying to get that constant feedback. We did publish our roadmaps. So we were taking the requirements in, how's the platform going to evolve over time, but we then went and published them out, and we said, over the next, different horizons, but what features are we going to land, and for what reason, and why they're there. And we did have some forms, if you've got some idea, here's a way to raise it, and we had a little commitment that we'll come and chat to you within a couple of days. It was 48 hours. We're not just, it's not just going off into the ether. We will come and talk to you and see how we can get that onto the roadmap. So let me just come back then. Final slide. Let me come back. So this is obviously you saw this earlier, but hopefully, as I've been going through, I've been talking about everything was self-service. We were incredibly all over self-service. We supported it 24/7. I had, and I did have a little bit of an issue with New Zealand, but mostly I was covered through a follow the sun. So I had a bit of a team in India, a bit of a team in the UK, a bit of team in Chile and in the US. So it's kind of worked that way. New Zealand was a bit of a tricky one. There was a few windows where we didn't actually have someone, and if anything went wrong, we would have that through call out, but it was supported. I thought it was compelling. We hit about 60, so our target was 80, we hit about 65% across a couple of measures. So one was the adoption of the platform, and one was the adoption of the golden path. There were a couple of the measures we did. We were about 65 to 70%. So we were aiming towards 80. Didn't feel that 65 was too far off in there. We kept evolving it, and I think we managed it as a product. So I'm going to steal, before we go to Q&A, I think we've got 5 minutes. I'm just going to steal 30 seconds. We are hiring, so come and speak to us afterwards. And the second thing I just want to mention is we put on some really fun technical events. We mash up game shows with tech stuff. We've got one coming up in November, so if that sounds of interest, we do like Have I Got News for You and The Chase, and the next one's going to be 8 out of 10 cats. So we've got those coming up. So if you're interested in coming to one of our events, come and speak to me afterwards. So I think we have 5 minutes for any questions.
How would you deal with a culture that's been very much resistant to change and very much like everyone's had their own platform and they've all been building it from scratch, and try and bring it all in-house to sort of, or as much in-house as possible to this sort of centralized platform?
It was, yes. So even when I was back in the UK at the time, we had that little ebb and flow and those kind of conflicts. I think a lot of it came from making that platform as compelling, so so that you could have the conversation with the leadership to say, you've got a team who is doing this, but would that team be better off building the actual value? Is there any value in running the platforms themselves, or is the value in building the products? And it was that kind of conversation. But you had to have, in my opinion, all those things ticked off before you could really justify the why they would want to make that. But it is hard, and there will always be people who will just say, I just want to run it myself. But you have to make it really compelling, in my opinion.
Just a very quick one. How much drop-off did you have? You know, people that built the platform and things and then didn't use it, or only used it a little bit, and, you know, were you measuring those metrics and then obviously saving the company money by reducing that down? And then you talked about evolving it. Evolving always sounds like positivity and things, but sometimes you've got to cut bits out. What kind of things did you cut out?
So I'll come to the second question first. So we did deprecate features. We deprecated things from it. It was part of the roadmap. So being in there and making sure that the teams were aligning to the security controls, for example, we deprecated old versions of Node. So our support in the platform dropped off. If there were teams on Java and et cetera, as we were going through, so if there were teams who were pinned to a really old version and therefore they were out of support, they also became out of support on our platform as well. So yes, we did have that kind of dropout. We ran it from that kind of side. In terms of the first question, we had really big user bases, and we had some where there was literally like one job a month going through it. So we had conversations with them and said, hey, you know, some of it could be, why aren't you using the platform? Is there anything that's missing from it? Sometimes it was somebody just filled in the form to see what actually happened. You know, oh, we got an instance. Well, we didn't actually need one. It looked cool, so I kind of go. But it was like a way to go and do that. So all those metrics that we were serving out, we also used internally by our product manager to go and serve some of the conversations we were having.
Okay, quick question from me. Before you built this platform as like a shared service, were people must have been using their own platforms before that, and was it much work to get them to adopt this new system and just manage to prioritize that? Yeah, no,
that's a really good question. So again, I'll draw the comparison between how things evolved in the UK and then also how things evolved globally. So within the UK, we saw that there were teams who had been doing the same sort of thing, and we kind of brought them together to say, hang on a minute, you built this thing over here, you built this thing on, let's bring together and we'll build up from that, and then you can start taking that through to other teams. The same thing was fortunate enough to happen on the enterprise scale, where I think I mentioned before, we had a very large business unit who had built out some of these core platforms themselves within them. We had another largest business unit that have done the same, and that became the opportunity to spot the similarities, and that created enough critical mass then to go and take then to other business units. So we were fortunate in that regard that enterprise-wide, we had two big business units where we spotted those big overlaps to say, it's a hell of a saving for you, it's a hell of a saving for you, and then we could go sell it to everybody else. So it's similar kind of thing, but just on different scales.
Just on that there, when you said about the two business units and finding the big savings there, was there any temptation from the people funding the platform, the rest of the business, to mandate some of these rather than having golden paths to, you know, build on those efficiencies?
There was definitely temptations at the CTO level, the very high level. We within as running the platform, the messaging that we were giving was, no, we didn't want those mandates to come out because it would go against what we were trying to build with the platform. But it was really strong from the very, very top that they wanted to say, because they were obviously focusing in on I can see all the benefits I'm getting over here, but I'm blind to what's going on with this other 35%. Why don't I just mandate everybody just go and use the platform? But so it was the messaging that we went through back up to the CTO to say, we don't want you to mandate it, but support us in the messaging that our platform is compelling when you talk to your immediate leadership team. But it is definitely there, yeah. Cool. Thank you.